Hey there, guys. It's been a little bit. Sorry I haven't been as frequent with the posting. I've just been playing shows, a little bit busy, and then also working on upgrading my setup for you all. I got some feedback from some students who recommended that maybe I get a keyboard light up on screen and maybe like some manuscript paper. So, in case we have to do one of these chords or something like that, maybe there's an easier way for you to follow along with that sort of thing, especially if you're newer to the sort of like earring stuff out. But I'm happy to have these upgrades ready for everybody, and hopefully you like them. And if you're new to the page, well, you get the nice bougier version, I guess, of these piano tutorials because I think this is how I'll probably do them going forward. So what are we doing today? We are going to talk about and break down the song "Do Right Woman, Do Right Man," and we are going to do the version by no other than the Queen herself, Aretha Franklin. Um, Her version is listed as one of the top 500 songs of all time, which is pretty crazy given the history of recorded music. But I could definitely understand why. The groove in the pocket that's created in this song is it just really kind of gets the neck going. So I've always loved that aspect of it. It's also really driving that churchy gospel sound forward. I feel like a lot in the way that she plays. She was raised in the church and sang in the church, and you can definitely hear it. Obviously, anybody who's listened to two or three of her songs, you can kind of instantly tell. But for those who maybe haven't, this is a very, I would say, by the book gospel approach to interpreting a song that may not originally have been a gospel. We've got organ on it, we've got piano, we've got some inversions happening all over the place, which is a really big part of gospel sound. You've got like the drop two voicings and inversions, or like polychords, like two chords at once. So there's some cool stuff like that going on. But for me, what I'd like to kind of focus on is that kind of 1-4-1 triad stuff that she does. The kind of sus, but maybe like major six sounding move. And then also just, you know, talk about her playing and the arrangement here. So without further ado or babbling, let's get down to business. All right, so right off the bat, we're gonna start with A major chord. Okay. Then we're gonna go to E. I'm gonna go back to my A. Then I'm gonna go to D first inversion, and then back to A. Okay. And the bass player is kind of taking a different line, so. Okay. It's kind of what's happening there with the bass. Now, what's cool is later on in your piano journey, if you stick with it, you're going to find out that when you get to like a seventh chord, if you invert it, it actually creates a different kind of chord altogether. And that idea can be pushed and stretched even further, or like if I have this 3-note voicing here and all of my chord tones, I've got E, A, and C sharp. Okay, you might be thinking, oh, it's just a good old, A major. Well, until I play F sharp in the bass, right? And then it's not really. So the bass really helps us find out what's going on with harmony in songs. And so just be listening for that, just as a rule of thumb, and that can really help when you're starting off. Like, what is the bass doing? Okay. And then the next thing I'd listen for is, what is the outermost note doing? What is that melody got going on? Right? What's the part I can whistle, right? Or if I were to listen to the brightest notes that the piano are playing, what am I hearing, right? Because it's not wrong to play A during the beginning of the song, but if you listen, you'll hear that organ, wee. You'll hear it go down dee doo, just like, right? So if you're listening for those things, you can kind of deduce some of that stuff a little bit faster. So I'm always listening for what's the lowest note, what's the highest note. All right, great. So that's our little intro. Let's talk about the verse. Okay, so here's where we start to get to some interesting stuff. She really likes to kind of go to this plagal kind of sound, like a lot of gospel songs, blues, you hear it all the time, the kind of 1 to 4 back to 1. And so if I think of each chord as like its own entity, I want to go to the 4 of that. So if I was on F, I go to B flat, right? Or if I was on E, go to A, D, go to G, that sort of thing. And so we hear that here. But what's cool about it too is sometimes she's already inverted the chord. And so the voicing, it actually sounds different the way that she does it. So we might have, or, okay. So I'm not going to go too crazy running through all the different possibilities, because there's a lot. And if you listen, you can ear them out. Okay, but that's the first chord we got. Okay, A. And I'll give you a hint. I'm going to start with this one here. This E7. Okay. Same thing. I got to be thinking, okay, what is the 4 of this E? Okay, treat each chord as its own thing. Well, that's going to be A, right? So then I can do these kind of like, all right. And when you listen to the song, you're going to hear her doing that. Okay, not just over the E7. Then she goes to the D. And what do you think she goes? Yeah. Now, what you'll have to listen for is she using an inversion? Okay. And what'll help you is, what is that top note I'm hearing? Right? Is it there? Or is it more? Okay. So then she goes to D. So we got 1, 5, 4. And nobody make me do wrong. Okay. Now I do want to talk about one specific pair of inversions leading into the A chord. Okay. So we just did a full loop through the verse. Now, we're going to go back to the 1 chord, but the way she does it is really cool. She starts with this inversion. Okay, so, right, we got our inversion with the 5th on the bottom, root position, first inversion D chord, back to our second inversion A chord. Okay, so again, coming back to a 1 chord, right, you can approach it so many different ways, and she just showed us how. Okay, you can use inversions of your 1 chord. You can also switch between inversions of the 4 chord and the 1 chord, because the 4 chord is always going to imply the amen, the plagal cadence. So you can, pretend as if you're going to resolve to that 1 chord, even though you might go somewhere else entirely. Okay, and so it's a really nice move. especially adding in the 4 with the inversions, you know, like if I was on E, right, I could, right, and that's just one way. There's so many different ways, but if you want to know the exact ones, my advice, dig deeper into that recording, okay? So this is our verse 1, okay, is playing with 1, 5, and 4 and these inversions. Okay, so it might end up sounding, you know, something like this. Okay, not too bad, right? I added in a E flat passing chord to the D. Also, I went kind of basic and just kind of did root position 1 to 4. You don't have to do that, right? You can do the inversions. Okay, and she does. She tries to make use of those when she can. But I also noticed in this song too, like, there's some points where she kind of drops out, or like the chord sounds pretty clunky, and she just kind of rocks with it. So that's also, I feel like, pretty sick that she just was like, yeah, well, let's leave it in there, and yeah, you know, it is what it is. So pretty cool. So we got our little blues break here, and we're gonna okay. Now again, you're supposed to kind of rub these. So if it's a little slippery when wet, that's okay. Okay, there's a little extra barbecue sauce on your mouth after you're eating the ribs, that's okay. All right, so it's not supposed to sound very staccato and surgical. Okay, so we're just rubbing up. Excuse me, going to 5th, and then I'm kind of going up from the. Now again, if you don't like the whole rub up, you could, okay, just 9th to the major 3rd. Okay, and this. Okay. And there we go. And then we go right into a B7. Okay. So that's a cool little riff. If I were to, you know, take that idea somewhere else, I'd say, okay, well, it's an A major blues riff. Okay. I've got all the components of the A major blues scale there. Okay, and I'm starting on the 5th, and I'm kind of double stopping off the 5th. What if I tried that like an F? And you get the idea, right? You can kind of move it around, and then all of a sudden you're kind of taking that language and applying it, which is what we want. So I really like that riff. I think it's cool. And it's an easy one, too. It's like a super short little motif. And it's something you can do over your major chords in a bluesy context. I mean, what more do you need? So moving on to the pre-chorus. Okay. Now, you can play this with just one note in the left hand. You can just play B. And then with your right hand, you could play A, D sharp, and F sharp. Okay. Okay. And then you can harmonize and walk it up. Now, I think she plays something similar to this. Okay. And you might be thinking, well, Jacob, where does the... how am I doing that in the key of A major? Well, I'll tell you. The way she's thinking, okay, and a lot of people think about this, if they're not thinking macro, like what is the key of the whole song, they might be thinking more like, what can I do to this specific chord? And this specific chord is a B7, which means that it's a mixolydian sound. Okay. And that also means we get this note. Okay, which allows us to then do this whole thing, go into E. Okay, and then we go to the final chord there, E, what I just mentioned. So we go from B to E. Okay, now this E, okay, I'm hearing a kind of E9 sus4. I'm hearing this. Okay, now how exactly that's played and executed, there's a lot of different ways you could do that, okay? But I'm hearing a kind of E sus thing to get us then to the chorus. Now, for this kind of section here, okay, we'd have to play it a little bit differently than the way it is in the recording, because in the recording, there's already all of the instruments kind of filling in those gaps to allow her to kind of make those chord stabs happen with a lot of syncopation and a lot of space in between each chord change. So if you really like what she's got going on there, it's going to be a lot more of the same stuff we did in the verse, where we're kind of taking like 1 and 4 and kind of moving them up. So like this kind of thing. Like stuff like that. Okay. So our chorus, we're gonna, if you wanna ride home day, woman, you gotta be a home night. Okay, so that's like the super simple reduced version. Okay. A to a B dominant to an E back to A. Now again, she does it more like Aretha style. So okay, now we're getting to some interesting stuff here. Okay, so here I wouldn't maybe use that note, but you could use that, right? Or maybe okay, and if you listen to the recording, you're gonna hear something pretty similar. Okay, so in the A. You're going to hear her taking little thirds up over that dominant chord, okay? Because what do dominant chords like? They like to be altered, okay? So she's just like, I'm going to run some thirds up through this shape. Great. Love it. You're the queen. You call the shots, right? Then we go to E. So when we play this A inversion, okay, on top of E, okay, so we invert the A into second inversion, we play it on top of E, we get this kind of E major 6 with the sus4 kind of thing. And you can get the melody that way. Okay, like in the beginning. Okay, so I like those inversions because. Now, she doesn't do 13 there. Okay, but you can play the 13 on there if you know what you're doing. So we can harmonize the melody using these inversions, right? And then over this B7, we have all kinds of things we can play because it's a dominant chord. So long as I keep that melody as that top note, you can get really creative with how you want to harmonize that. So listen to how she approaches the chorus, and it'll really inspire you because you'll hear all of these possibilities that she's running through that I think is really, really cool. And it wasn't too bad for me to figure out. Obviously, I'm a jazz enjoyer and I've transcribed a couple things, but like that is my advice would be to just even take the chorus and be like, can I figure out what's happening over this B7? Like, or can I harmonize a melody just for the chorus of this song? And that's a great exercise, right? Because if you're not singing the melody and you're just piano playing, it's going to be really hard to know maybe what song we're singing along with or playing or listening to, unless we kind of have that melody going on. So again, the chorus section is probably like peak inversions and taking some of these things that she does over like the B7. I would be listening for that kind of stuff. All right. So then there's another little thing too. When we get to the chorus, chorus happens twice in the song at least. Okay, you'll hear that she approaches the if you want to do right all night, that kind of stuff. Okay, going to the B, but approaching it like that, right? That would be the next step after you've got the basics down, getting some of the inversions, or maybe you've tried harmonizing the chorus, the melody. It's like, okay, well, now I got to get those little pickup notes, so I can be, coming in there like, you want to get that left hand so you can be like, right, get a little bit more harmonic rhythm going in the left hand, okay? That's about all I want to say on the chorus. Again, A to a B to an E, okay, back to A. All right. The bridge real quick, okay? So we've got a little pickup into the bridge. Okay. C sharp, E, F sharp. All right. And then in the right hand, F sharp minor. And look what she's doing. She's inverting it. Yep, first inversion. And you can hear that note on top. And then what I just do there, I went back to E, which would be the one of this two. Okay, and again, that's kind of a gospel move. We've already been there. But that was the D. It's similar, but it's a little different. Okay, and again, right, using the minor 2 to the 1 or the 1 to the 4 kind of thing is definitely a gospel move, okay? And they're slightly different sounds, but you could totally. Okay, and this is the kind of stuff she does when she's on a chord for a long time. This is where her head's going, because this is her tradition. Okay, this is what she knows. Okay, now here we're gonna go down to C sharp minor. Okay, but that's not the note I want. Okay, the note that's on top is that. So whoops. Here we go. So you can see how you can add a little bit of motion to each of the chords, okay? And then we're just gonna go down to, we've been there before, okay? That's our E9 sus4, okay? Or again, you could think of it like, okay, this inverted A over E. Okay. Now, the reason I like to say this is kind of more of the sound than that is because if you listen really closely, you can hear there's kind of a funky note over the E, and that's almost always gonna be, oh, okay, that's a dominant, right? It's kind of, you can kind of hear it if you listen closely. And then, okay, here, right, I can get just an E. Then when I come down here, I get the 7th. So if I don't play the 7th in my left hand, whoops, if I don't go like this, I can just, what, I can kind of attack it that way. And then with the right hand, just an E inversion, which we've already used a trillion times in this song, and a D inversion, which we've also already used a trillion times in this song. So getting more mileage out of voicings and inversions and things that she already used, but she's using it in a different context, and it sounds cool. So that's the last section of this song. And then now let's get some closing remarks. We've got our intro, we've got our verse, we got our pre-chorus, we got our chorus, and we got our bridge. That's the song, all right? Now, the things that I would focus on would be, one, rhythm, okay? What's going to make everything sound really nice is if you're coming in on the right downbeats and you don't miss, right? So right? If I'm missing that punch right into that B7, or if I'm struggling with those inversions, that's where I'd attack first. Okay, I get a metronome on, going real slow, and I want to see how many, like, okay, I'll just make it into a game. How many inversions can I squeeze into one measure? Whoops, messed up. Okay, got to do it again. And run it through the chords of this song until it feels really, really nice. And then, yeah, like I said, hitting those right downbeats is going to be important, okay? Or knowing when not to play, okay? You can hear that she's listening to the band, and she's playing the piano only when she has to imply some kind of sound over the chords. For my maybe less musical people, okay, she's using the watercolor very, very lightly, okay, because a lot of other stuff is already going on the canvas, right? So she doesn't need to go in there fully opaque black and just cover the thing, you know, right? She can kind of go up over to the side and put some light kind of texture into the whole picture, right? And I feel like that's kind of what she's doing with her piano playing, because she doesn't come in on the one a lot of times on the piano. Okay, maybe she does on the organ, but she's like waiting for the beat to drop and the bass player to imply the chord before, she kind of comes in with a right for the E. She's not going to play E right on one. And people who really enjoy blues and jazz and stuff like that know this, right? Like, we know that that one, while it is important, so are the gaps. So is the and of the beat, and it's integral to understand those gaps in the spacing and the swing, right? Letting the rhythm kind of breathe a little bit and not marching, right? We're not marching to the gospel music necessarily, okay? But the feel is probably the biggest one I would work on this song. Okay, technically, I wouldn't say this is like a super difficult piece if you understand some inversions and some seventh chords and stuff like that. But hopefully with some of the stuff I'm showing you, it can be a lot easier for you to get into music like this and attempt playing stuff like this. And by all means, please like and subscribe. Please show me some love. This is a new page, and I'm doing what I can to hopefully present this information in a really positive and open way where you feel like you don't have to be a master, but also hopefully can learn something. And just let me know in the comments what I should do next. Maybe what song, pop song or rock song or some obscure song I should do next. But I hope you enjoyed this look at, again, the intro, the chorus, the bridge, the verse, one of the iconic blues riffs, and how we can play those things. I hope you find that interesting, and I hope it helps your playing. And just keep listening to music all the time. Keep listening to different kinds of music, and look forward to the next one. So thank you so much, and enjoy your week. See you next time.